One, the baby boomer falsification. The actualization of the human population skyrocketing after the Second World War was majorly fixated on the end of World War II and the 1900s Industrial Revolution. But there was actually one particular factor that was, in fact, the culprit of this thought to be natural consequence due to convention and contemporary innovation, as multifold expansion of population growth was attributed to being a natural progression of human life. What we find is that the actuality of the focus of the television, and as it became the household centerpiece, it was used to provide the entirety of the family with exposure to consistent themes of sexuality and romance. The major occurrence that had made for such an explosion in population growth was the beginning of the third-party Hollywood tabloid promotion in an industry market. And it began with one instance of Elvis Presley playing a guitar on television, and as it is well known to do, that when you play guitar, there's likely some movement and sensibility of dancing. The networks of broadcasting had said to the entire family unit that Elvis had made gyrating sexual movements on television. This was completely false and had made for an instance of exposing the entirety of the American public to the theme of sexual inappropriateness, as an ongoing theme that, while was making for sexual curiosity of interest and temptation on a broader scale, more frequent has also opened the doors to the beginning of the sexual revolution. While it is more or less publicized that the 60s was the mark of the drug crusade of dispensation of medicating and recreational use, it was actually the 50s that had made for this major redirection of activity, as the use was inconsistent with the media's ability to consistently expose the public to the theme. It would have had to be done progressively and slowly. While marijuana and rock and roll and hearings about people sticking white powder up their nose and losing their minds and their lives, amphetamines were the 50s drug of choice and did not sufficiently break the news as to be known as a mainstay of the 50s controversy. As people engaged in rock and roll and the nightlife became more expansive than ever. 2. The second instance of Paul McCartney's interview, or being of Paul McCartney's interview. Paul McCartney recalls in the Bob Fritz biography of the Beatles that he was interviewed in June of 1967 that he had tried LSD lysergic diethylamide before it had become the broad mainstay awareness of public's interest in the majority of the developed and Western world, as the Beatles were at the time the most influential and famous cultural phenomenon of the 60s. This on its own had brought about the masses having an interest in LSD and mysticism right at the promotional juncture of its distribution and public awareness reaching greater relevance in what occurred in society. All that was needed was a dispensation of occultic knowledge, practice, and outlandish hedonism, which was done by the rest of Hollywood, which the CIA works with, one notable franchise being one of the oldest, James Bond, 007, first film 1962, which, if that isn't sufficient, then I guess I can go ahead and also mention the documentary um, Out of Shadows. The unveiling of Janet Jackson's breast in the American public in the most watched family-oriented event of the year made for the needed visceral fuel to accustom the world to the internet's accessibility to deplorability. 2004 being about the time that the movement of high-speed internet broadcast had become a common commodity. The precursor to this being, as I heard from another, Michael Jackson was a family-oriented entertainer that danced with the signature of grabbing his genitals, and this I do not know if it in fact was generally accepted by the public of the 90s. That's all. That's it. Three instances of media manipulation of historical delineation in the 1900s and through 2000s. Commentary. So, what can be known about these three specific instances, which I've discussed already, is that one, we have pretty much Elvis kicking off the entire exploration of uh, sexual revolution, well, sexuality. Um, obviously this was a ploy to go ahead and by all the psychological and sexual studies by Kinsey, John Money, and I suppose even what's his name? Uh, uh, Aldous Huxley's brother. Uh, we're being put into play. We're being established as part of the curriculum of what they were going to go ahead and um, teach people once the television was properly established. But really, to teach someone is to educate them, and to educate someone is not to misguide them. So we know that to be true. Um, it's my understanding that Elvis was, I suppose, 23 or 24 years old. So that's kind of a given since everyone in the music industry follows the Chinese zodiac calendar pretty fairly, and when they go ahead and and actually begin their careers, it's always around 24 years old. As you go ahead and take a look at it. Um, so it was same thing with the Beatles, 1964, right? And that's the year that the two most the oldest of the members turned 24. So you have that whole kind of 24, 23 mentality, I anyway, so um of course, I mean they would do that since that's all very much occultic uh occultic general understanding of established in anthropomorphization of the cosmos to provide, a mythology and a sort of Gnostic view of um, life, culture, meaning, the year that one was born, etc. So, uh, there isn't really much more to say about Paul McCartney's interview since um, it was well established that if there ever was a, I mean, that he came into the interview and that was the whole point, to address that um, a he had done lysergic diethylamide or LSD to the whole world. So that wasn't, I suppose that was CIA at its finest. So um, let's remember that Paul McCartney has been knighted by the Queen. So usually see very odd characters who don't really have any kind of aspect as to why they would be knighted by the Queen, since they're just entertainers. But usually, if you're knighted by the Queen, it's because you've established quite a bit of a credential in being something in a in a warlike symbolism. Since if you're a knight, then that would mean that you are um, something of a military fashion. So, um, Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson, you know, that right there is, purely for the promotion of the pornography accessibility that was pretty much well established by that time. Um, as we all know, DSL, the first um, common accessible public internet, high-speed internet, broadband, was well underway and well established in 2004. It was generally 2002 when that started to go ahead and become available to people. Uh, we all remember the Roadrunner um, cartoons pretty much promoting DSL when it first came out. And these are the three instances uh, of media manipulation, of historical delineation by mostly, I guess, Hollywood. So let's get to where this is going. So, in the last 5 years, we pretty much had um, a complete. In the last 5 years, we've had a major onslaught on the uh, minds of developing children uh, specifically to go ahead and and I'm gonna go ahead and say this. So, uh, fourth. So in the last 5 years, we pretty much had um, the entire we had a major onslaught on the minds of developing children, pretty much establishing that um, they're supposed to be a sexual entity first before being a personality. And that was the entire indoctrination. That was the entire program that was being set up in schools and generally um, promoted to the entirety of society, whether they wanted to or not. Um, that this is what we're going to teach the kids. Uh, they don't want to do anything else but completely uh, have them thinking in such a abstract way about who they are, what they are, and what they consist of. Um, Mostly to go ahead and turn them into whatever they want. But the main focus was um, them being a sexual entity first, making them a sexual entity first, and then allowing letting allowing their personalities to actually develop, which by then, um, who knows what their perception of truth is. So that's it. The fourth is the onslaught on the minds of children in 2020 through 2025 or 24. Yep. Um, of uh, onslaught of the minds of children on the minds of children to develop into a sexual entity first, and second, and then, or second, then, or really just then, first, and then a personality, a right. So through Kinsey's work and John Money's formation of I guess, ideology of 72 genders of designation. And I'm pretty sure, to some degree, Aldous Huxley's brother. which I'm not going to look up the name right now, were very much involved in what is eugenics, which ends up being um, transhumanism. And at this point, we already have people who claim to be post-humanist, as in they believe that the entirety of the point of or what they're doing is to leave the human race altogether, and this ends up being just part of the um, the concept of becoming gods, attempting to do so. That's the video I have for today on the subject. But yeah, post-humanism, uh, the idea of leaving the human race altogether for life extension to whatever degree, and seems to and generally has a it seems to have a I'm understanding and seeing is that this generally seems to have a direction as to where people want to go with their post-humanism, whether it's biomechanical, um, genomic, uh, whether it's a mixture of both, uh, but as it says, right? Let me go ahead and put this right there. As the days of Noah. There you have it. Post-humanism, the idea of leaving the human race altogether for the life extension, to whatever degree, and um, due to due to all the um, ideological conceptions of theosophy, occultism, um, and Luciferianism, then it's the concept of becoming gods, since that's what a lot of these uh, attempts, a lot of this information is actually making an effort to do so. Posthumanist would be Michael Levin, scientist and inventor of, or pro co-developer of xenobots, and um, generally has a uh, view or a narrative of pretty much stating that he doesn't really care about the origins of life. He only cares about modifying it. And the extent as to what he would modify or what he would do is generally completely um, alter something to whatever fundamental re- level that he can, because he doesn't really seem to have any appreciation for the sacredness of uh, the way life was made, the way he speaks in and his videos directly from SEMF, which is I forgot what it's called, Society of I can look it up right now, which it's let's see, yeah. So I mean, cell intelligence and physiological morphological spaces, continuum of being, um, radical plasticity in animals. I mean, most of these are just small segments of his bigger videos, which I know that this is one of them in its entirety. So is this one, and right. So one thing's for certain is that Michael Levin is a post-humanist, computational boundary of a self. That one's pretty much just talking about the Internet of Things, and yeah, I mean the other one is him and Xenobots, which is right here. Rupert Sheldrake talks very well about him, even though this man is on the frontier of just doing something that really doesn't really consist of science anymore. Not that a lot of the things that they do ever did to begin with. So, video for the actual um, yeah, this is it right here, which describes a full discussion on the matter of the developing team. Everyone who pretty much had a proper knowledge of what was going on in that that endeavor of developing that technology, whatever that means or does or is, because if you look it up online, it doesn't even say if bots are living or not, or and then course, right, it states that, or if there's something completely different or something else, which we'll go ahead and look it up very quickly. Additionally, on the discussion of this particular uh, article and writing, this writing is that uh, Hollywood mostly established and um, was developed by the OTO and Aleister Crowley and the OTO before actually uh, um, showing itself as the Institute of Film and Entertainment as it came into its uh, its fruition in the 1920s. And then we have, I guess, what people call the golden age of Hollywood, which I don't know, it was the 30s or the 40s, but it was something like that. And here you have, pretty much 100 years later, they're being established the Aldous Huxley, not only the Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, um, Aldous Huxley's Brave, you know, established Aldous Huxley's Brave New World concept of a paradigm, but you also have what seems to be Planet Hollywood, which is the actual um, golden age of Hollywood. Apparently, a 100-year plan go ahead and establish Babylon uh, in the end of days. If one takes a look at, I guess, one small piece of media that has has titled this would be, I guess, Thundercats album. How do you call it? The golden age of the apocalypse, which was his first album. And given, this was just another Los Angeles OTO, um, Freemason, whatever, secret society, um, member rising to fame and popularity, because that's all these things are very orchestrated before they go ahead and establish any of these things or execute them. You have Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, Planet Hollywood, which is the actual golden age of Hollywood, um, which I suppose they have a uh, consideration of it being done by 2030, but since that would actually mark more or less, I would actually say something about when Hollywood actually began, or was actually starting to go ahead. Yeah, Hollywood, Golden Age, nine, right, 1900s through 1930s to 1960. What's very interesting to note is that a lot of the public, uh, I guess, formation of, which I can get into some other time, but one of the very interesting things is that the public formation of, I guess, the sort of futurism based commercial art that was available through the 50s specifically, the 40s, I guess, and always showed people in this kind of either noble sense of wonder or not fear, but fear and I guess yeah, fear of the unknown, the future, right? Was always established in, I guess, a kind of conservative format, which by then it was absolutely yes the public was very conservative then, uh, knowing very well that conservative means to conserve values, the actual meaning of not some kind of modernity or modern interpretation, but that which is known and well known and will always be known by God. So, um, which will always be known about God. So, just now we have the Fallout series, and it has that entire kind of uh, uh, I guess aesthetic of it being conservative when the entire um, concept, the entire idea and concept, or the entire concept of Fallout is everything, and it's the furthest thing away from conservative. I mean, this is why you have the Brotherhood of Steel, which is just a reference to Freemasonry. Um, they're pretty much showing a, whole formality of where the military-industrial complex is heading or going, um, as things become unstable here on Earth, etc. And there's quite the bit of that in the Fallout series, it's really promoting the juxtaposition of conservative values by actually showing a conservative aesthetic when really it's the promotion of the furthest things of it possible, I suppose, or of it. And it generally shows, uh, you know, the Brotherhood of Steel, which is really just, Freemasonry in the future, if it will even have a future. It has pretty much all these, you know, genealogical and uh, geological uh, fragmentation and collapse of the world. And even then, it has an entire neurological concept of the military industrial complex, which I can get into in another video. I'm not sure if there is anything else to say. Which there was something to say. Um, in the show of the Fallout, um, they do state that the end of the world, well, they state that the end in the show of the Fallout series, when it came out, whenever they're discussing pretty much Vault-Tec and all that stuff, which has to do with that aspect of them more or less promoting some aspects um of what they had stated so in the show was that the end of the world is a product, as they had stated so, or had said, or would. And the only thing is that in the show it specifies how the uh, the company itself, the uh, had pretty much caused um, the entire cataclysm, the nuclear cataclysm, in order to sell shelters, which kind of brings up the other part of the Fallout series, or part the other concept of being sheltered, which whenever they show this highly unrealistic formality, highly unrealistic indoctrination, formality of, I guess, national American patriotism, uh, and where all the people who come are in the vaults have a just nationalistic, uh, a a very superficial nationalistic uh, American patriotism, which conservative, right? I mean, conception of conservatism by a generation that doesn't have really a sense of a hold on reality because they have been sheltered, or as the show would put it. But really, anyone in that situation, and in such a situation where they would be in a shelter, a bomb shelter, as that kind of thing shows, is that um, they would be very different. Everything from knowing their historical delineation to how they go ahead and uh, um, understand their uh, generational uh, lapse and what has occurred. You know, they would know very much about it, and um, given the Fallout show is very unrealistic. So, in that sense of what they showed and promoted, as far as people from Vault-Tec, whatever, how they would be this nationalistic American uh, conservative uh, nationalistic American patriotism, which is based very much on conservatism, but also has this complete sense of it being completely naive, and that what's being presented is more like a comic book. And that's what that is, and that's that. So, um, as the days of Noah, this thing's going to go in every single direction, since or it will go in the direction of the Lord. So, actually, it's going to go in the direction of the Lord. So, anyways, save yourself by holding on to God while you can. God bless you. And Jesus Christ. Amen.